Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple R Show, Real Raw Recovery, where honesty meets healing every single day. And today, we're grateful to have Chad Johnson, who is a podcaster from Chicago. His podcast is Not All There. So, Chad, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm happy to be here, man. It's an honor.
And as we approach the holiday season, if you've ever felt overwhelmed or disconnected, and been tempted to fall back into old patterns and old behaviors during the holiday season, Chad and I are going to talk about resilience and gratitude and how you can get through the season with strength.
Yes, it's really important. An old sober friend of mine and I share this saying. It's almost a philosophy that during the holidays I get thirsty, and it's not that I want to go out and drink or use again or necessarily fall back into old behaviors, but it's this awareness that this is the time of the year where so many people, they overdo it. And it's usually because of stress, anxiety, family struggles, family challenges. And that feeling, that thirsty feeling, is a great way to describe, at least for me, what the holidays are like. I've got over 11 years of continuous sobriety, and I still get that feeling.
Yeah, and what it is with the hustle and bustle and everything, and the shopping and the cooking and families coming together and reunited, people feel overwhelmed, and that's where I think we need to remember to stay grounded and in the present moment, because that I find is where our power is.
Oh, absolutely. It is the grounded is the best way to do it, or say it. And a person told me very early on in my recovery is a trick that they use is that you can start your day over at any time. And I use that continuously because I run hot. I got a fuse that's about 1 centimeter long, and I will get real angry or not angry outwardly at people, but really angry with myself. It's just this old wiring that I have that I work continuously at to fix. But I get overwhelmed, and then I react inwardly at myself. But I'm aware enough now that I just take a second, a few breaths, and I just say, okay, I'm starting my day over now. And that is a very powerful tool, a grounding tool. And it is something that I use, like I said, in my day-to-day life. But rolling into this holiday season on Thursday, man, I'm going to be starting my day over about 50 times.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said aware, because awareness is so important in so many areas of recovery. And when we become aware, when we spoke about it here a lot, and I'm sure you have as well, is that, life is not linear, whether it's the holidays or it could be in the middle of the summer. So when we are aware that things are going to come up and down, as long as we keep them on those slow waves and they're not spiking either up or down, and we recognize that, and that's a great tool right there, just to start over or take a breath. Or just, go to another room and group.
Exactly. That was one thing that was pounded into me throughout my first 4 or 5 years in sobriety. Is like you don't have to stay, you don't have to be there, and that doesn't mean like leaving the dinner or the event, but you certainly can. That's well within your power and reasonable and allowed. You should allow yourself to do that. But leaving, I spend a lot of time in bathrooms, and I don't use the toilet every time I go in there, especially, we'll use Thanksgiving, which is just around the corner. I'll be walking into that bathroom several times, and it's just a reset. Sometimes I just splash a little water on my face or just take some deep breaths and take a moment to myself, because those resets are what's important. If I don't do that, if I'm not aware and use those tools that I have, I will build in resentments. I don't have the desire to use anymore. I don't really crave it, but what you mentioned, it's the old behaviors, and that's once those compound and start stacking up, it gets real dangerous. And that is what can lead you back to using again. So those moments, quiet times in the bathroom, taking a walk, whatever it might be, that is self-care. That is what recovery is like, is taking care of yourself in these small little moments.
You mentioned going to the bathrooms and taking breaks. That's part of the escape that a lot of people in active addiction do. through a substance. So now you're not even using the substance, but you're still escaping from who you are.
Right.
And even going to that event, like you said, we have the power not to go there, but you've made that choice. And small victories, giving ourselves small victories, huge step in your self-esteem development and your self-worth,
Absolutely.
which I find insanely important for your recovery. How you feel about yourself.
It is. Yeah, and I am my own worst critic, and I always have been. I have like a lot of us, my early life was very challenging and caused a lot of issues for me emotionally and mentally. And so I was pre-wired, I guess you could say, because of my upbringing to have no self-confidence, no self-esteem, and just a very negative outlook of myself. And I talked terribly to myself. And it took a lot of work and a lot of time to do that with these small victories. That is a very important thing to be aware of when you're in early recovery, is that, look, man, this is just going to take time, and that's okay. Because you're going to have to take your life literally in bite-sized pieces. And these small victories are great. Like, people get loaded at Thanksgiving, and it's always like the crazy uncle that comes out and says some shit to you like, oh, look, you gained weight, and that's a moment where you start to feel bad about yourself, and then you want to lash out at them. But that's a perfect opportunity to just let that go, right? Just like, hey, that's not who I am now. Okay. And it isn't who you are now. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't. You're not drunk. You're not loaded, and you're not carrying around resentments or becoming the story for future Thanksgivings. And believe me, I know there are several of those stories about Chad out there.
No, well, yeah, for sure. And not moving forward, though, that's the key point. And with these events, and you're seeing family, sometimes people in early recovery for the first time in a long time.
Yes.
And what a big hurdle is worrying too much about what other people are thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I did all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What are they thinking? What are they thinking about? And when you get to the point that, and you understand that I can't control what other people are thinking.
You can't.
I can't control what other people are saying. The only person I can control is myself. And as long as you're doing that, then you're on the right track.
Absolutely. That is so true, is that, another cliche is what other people think about you is not your business. It isn't. It has nothing to do with you. That's them. That's their perception. That's their reality. Those are their thoughts and emotions, and that has nothing to do with who you are. And so that is very important to be, again, aware. It's all about being aware of, what your triggers are, really. And pretty soon, once you become aware of them and work at that awareness, work at just letting it go, they become fewer and fewer, and you're able to actually enjoy these family gatherings.
And we were talking about resilience, but also another thing is I've been doing so well and I've been working so hard, well, it's Christmas or it's Thanksgiving. One glass of wine is not going to kill me.
Yeah.
Or one beer is not going to, change my recovery, which is completely false. So that's just leaving the back door open so you can slip out. I like to call that a hall pass. And that pass is not getting you back to class.
No, it's not. It's not. It'll lead you to the wrong kind of class. And it usually, for some of us, that might involve, an orange jumpsuit and bars. It's good to recognize that you are doing well, you are doing better, but it's also important to remember that where you just came from, what your life was just like, and is that something that you want to go back to? And I'm pretty sure most of us would say no. A big part of my recovery has always been a connection with other people. Always having somebody to call or text when I find myself in this pinch. And, whichever way you have chosen to find recovery, I can guarantee you're not doing it alone. And those people that are with you during that, it's great to reach out, to call, like, whatever you're feeling, even if you just need to vent, right? And yell into the phone about something stupid. I have done that so many times. And it helps me. And also, the crazy thing is it helps that other person as well. And that is a really important thing to remember during holidays, during your day-to-day life, no matter what you're feeling, is that you're not alone in what you're feeling and what you're going through. You're not. Even though you may feel alone, you're not. And when you open yourself up to that, I think you'll find it much easier to attract similar people to you similar people like you, and create that connection in that community, which for me is the most important part of my recovery, is the connections that I have.
Yeah, and when you share it with other people and you share it with another person, you're taking the power away from that thought, as opposed to bottling it in. And we talk about with the holiday, and it's a celebration. And you said you remember where we came from. And during the holidays, having a glass of wine and a beer wasn't about connection and warmth and celebrating the holiday. It was about escaping and having as much as I possibly could. And when everyone left is when the party really started. So everyone's night was over, hugs and kisses. It was so great.
I'll clean up the mess. Don't worry. That's when it really got down, is when everybody was asleep and I spent 3 hours cleaning the kitchen. Right. We were talking, you mentioned resilience, and, it's kind of I don't know, it's might be a difficult or challenging way for people to conceptualize this, but to get to where you are, to find sobriety and to get into active recovery, you were a resilient person. You endured a lot. And if it was anything like me, especially towards the end of my drinking, you endured like incredible turmoil and pain and agony. And that is something to, embrace in a healthy way, that, look, if I have to go through this dinner tonight and I sweat a little bit and I'm a little bit anxious, okay, it's understandable, perfectly normal. Like, don't beat yourself up about that. But just remember where you came from and what you went through and how you survived it. If you survived that, you can certainly survive a few hours, with a bunch of annoying family members and a dry turkey.
Yeah. And again, the willingness to take those steps to get to where you are now.
Yes.
Is another victory. We're talking about victories. Just think about, whether you went to a treatment center and going to meetings or therapists, and the struggles in your early recovery that really a lot of people don't even know about.
Oh, because it's really important that you bring that up, Mike, and that you talk about that, because those are overlooked. Those are taken for granted, I believe. And, I know that I did. And it wasn't something that was really brought to my attention until after a while I finally started to force myself to give a little bit of credit to myself, that, shoot, man, look what I did. And look what I have done for myself, and by extension for my family and friends. And those little steps along the way, those victories do count. I mean, honestly, people are gonna be like, what? Like, yeah, getting up and brushing your teeth and, maybe combing your hair, splashing some water on your face, make a bed. Each one of those are small victories. And, active addiction, it can be crippling, literally crippling. In the morning, I would be so hungover or still high or whatever it was, however messed up I was. And I wouldn't make my bed. I wouldn't brush my teeth. I wouldn't shower. I barely ate. And, eating a meal, that's a win. Eating a healthy meal, that is a win. Going outside, feeling the sun on your skin, that is a win. And those after a while become the highlights of your life, like making my bed, walking my dog, those are great moments in my life that I used to just despise and had huge resentments over. And, especially during the holidays, treat yourself to these small victories, because you've earned it and you deserve to feel good.
Absolutely. And all those things you're talking about, which are everyday occurrences to everyone else, become secondary and tertiary. They're not even on the radar.
No.
The most important thing is make sure you have enough in your house or in your car, wherever it is, to get you through the day so you can get to your happy place and escape where you feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And, here's another thing that, I, like many recovering alcoholics, have sweets are my absolute kryptonite. And I still get uneasy at these events, and but there are always lots of pies around and ice cream. And you know what, man? It's okay. Have 2, 3, even 4 pieces of pie if you have to get through that day, man. It is really okay. Because you know what? You might have a stomach ache from that, but you're not drunk. You're not high. You're not, it is okay to do that. Really, truly. And I highly recommend it for those that are in early sobriety. Have that extra cake or pie.
Yeah, and an extra cookie or an extra piece of pie is not fracture your relationship or get you arrested.
Exactly. People are like,
or cause mayhem and chaos throughout the whole.
Depending on the group of people you're in, they're like, wow, 3 pieces of pie. Well, it's like, it's either that, man, or I piss in the turkey and light the living room on fire. And
in that case, they're going to say, have 2 more pieces.
Eat the whole thing, man. I'll run to the store and get some more Cool Whip.
They call this, I've heard Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's like the Bermuda Triangle of holidays there. And Thanksgiving is not going to define who you are. And Christmas is not going to define your recovery.
No.
And Christmas Eve is not going to change where you're going. Only you are.
Yes, you are in control of your emotions, whether you realize that or want to believe it. You are. And something that I use is, there's the bathroom trick. And it's funny you mentioned the bathroom was a friend of mine. Yeah, I have a story I will share with you involving a bathroom at a strip joint, and it was anyway. But sometimes I will do push-ups. And that helps, just to do like 10 push-ups as fast as you can, or jumping jacks, or some kind of physical movement. It resets, regulates your body. Or, if you're sitting at a table and you're feeling anxious at dinner and you're like not sure you can get up, you can take some deep breaths without anybody knowing. Just these little things that can help, regulate your emotions, regulate your system, if you will, and allow you again to start over. And then, finish up quickly and go get that pie.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about thought and thinking with Real Raw Recovery. And I know you too as well, since with our conversations. But when you get to the point where you're feeling a certain way, because we are human and we are going to experience emotions, that understands that those emotions are coming from our thoughts and what we're thinking about. And if we can be aware of the fact that we are feeling a certain way, frustrated, upset, angry, well, what's making me feel that way? And when we don't let our emotions control our behaviors is where you've really taken a turn in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. And it happens without you even really realizing it until one day you do. And, I have relationships in my life that have very challenging histories and pasts. And, we talk a lot about, forgiveness and recovery. And, the most important person to forgive in recovery is yourself. Start with yourself and then work outward from there. And, you will find that as you forgive people, and forgive yourself for your part in what that relationship was, your recovery becomes stronger. You actually physically feel lighter as you do this, and you learn to meet people where they're at. As it said somewhere, we don't we don't forget the past, and we certainly don't close the door on it either, right? So, yeah, you have a history, and yeah, it probably had something to do with fueling your addiction, but that was then. And you're not that person any longer. And chances are that person that you experience that memory with is not that person either. And it's important to work towards meeting somebody where they're at that moment. And this takes a lot of work on your part. That's the thing about recovery that I try to share with people, is that it's amazing. It changes your life in ways you never thought imaginable. But it's not easy. It isn't. It takes a lot of work on your part and a lot of patience, especially. And as you do that, though, these perceived challenges or stressors from the holidays, you'll be able to do them standing on your head before you know it.
I'm glad you brought up forgiveness, especially for our listeners that are struggling with that, because I struggled with that big time, with forgiving myself for choices that I had made in my life. And when I started to understand that I did the best that I could with the knowledge, understanding, and awareness that I had in that situation. And now with more knowledge, that I'm not going to make the same choices the next time, that I'm going to do better the next time.
It's, when you begin to understand that in any kind of capacity, you then start to have, some compassion, empathy for that other person that was involved in that memory, because they were the same way. They were doing the best that they could at that moment with what they had available to them. And a lot of us struggle with, familial relationships, whether with parents or, spouses, siblings, on and on. And, when you work to forgive yourself and understanding that, you did the best you could in that moment with what you had available to you, you understand that, chances are my parents, my family member did the best that they could with what they knew and had available to them at that time. And that makes your life a bit easier as well, because that, sometimes it helps with the road rage. Like, well, I don't know why they cut me off, but apparently they, they didn't know any different. So, that's just sort of a exasperated example of it. But the self-awareness and having compassion for yourself, and then by extension, having compassion for others, because chances are they didn't know any different either.
Yeah, and it's not like you're condoning your behavior or you're condoning other people's behavior, but you are accepting it, So I accept it as, no matter which party we're talking about, with the knowledge, understanding, and awareness. And it allows you to have compassion for yourself and empathy around the whole situation, which makes forgiveness that much easier.
So that, to keep banging the drum about the compassion and self-forgiveness, the extension of it in everyday life is truly, truly remarkable. That, I find myself, I have a dog that requires, it's really the only exercise I'm getting these days, but it's like 5 to 6 miles a day with this dog. So I'm out walking my dog all the time. And I see people on the street, and I'm always doing the best I can to be aware and smile and say hello. And it is a form of compassion for the other person. And, more often than not, you get a sincere, genuine reaction from the other person that made them feel good or seen, or you don't really know what that person was experiencing that day. And just a simple hello really cheered them up. I walked past a guy today that had some pretty sweet Pumas on, and I said, "Hey man, nice shoes." And he stopped and was just like, it made his morning. It was really, really cool. And I wouldn't have done that normally. And it's something that I try to work at every day is being compassionate, empathetic, and trying my best to see other people for where they're at and who they are.
And on the same token with that, and conversely, because all of these characteristics are in play with everything in recovery, and they all come together. It's when they come together is when you start seeing the light, and you take that load off your shoulders, and that's where gratitude will come in. But you're not going to get that friendly response from everybody. And then with me, I used to be like, well, what's the matter with them? And then I would get all frustrated. And then, so if we're going to take the same school of thought that, they're doing the best with the knowledge, understanding, and awareness they have, we have no idea what they're going through, what they had just gone through, or the news they may have just gotten, or any trauma they're dealing with talking to a stranger or something. So and they've forgotten about it. And all of a sudden, like 25 minutes later, I'm like, What's the matter with that dude?
Right. So, yeah, it's funny. It goes back to what people think about you is none of your business. And conversely, what you think about them, that's not your business either. That doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. And even if that person maybe knew how you felt or thought about them, do you think they really care? Do you think so? It doesn't mean anything to them, right? And a lot of these things, these skills and tools that we learn in recovery, we talk about this in our day to day life, right? But if you apply these in your professional life, whether it is, you're an employee, an employer, a student, what have you, you start applying these in your professional life with the way you interact with people in that professional circle, you will see a huge difference in that relationship. And it is a fine way to learn how to understand yourself and to learn how to understand others in that professional environment. You can leave it at work when you go home, but it is very powerful to apply all of this in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, and in these tools, you hear it all the time, whether it's a meeting, a 12-step meeting, or your therapist, or church, or wherever you're at, and you're acting a certain way, and you're practicing the principles of transformation or recovery. And then for the rest of the day, the next 23 hours, you're not practicing at all. So you're not growing, you're not moving forward. And I think if you're stuck, then you're not moving forward. In recovery, we want to always continue moving forward because there's no final destination.
Now there is not a destination. No, when I first got sober, I started running marathons, as one seems to do frequently nowadays when in early recovery. And I realized, within my first year of recovery and training for the Chicago Marathon, that I wasn't running towards anything. I was running from something, and that's what was motivating me. But I was able to flip that idea, that knowledge into that, I'm just going to have to run toward that my entire life. And that's okay, man. And that offered me some relief, just like, okay, well, this is just what I have to do. This is just how I'm going to have to live my life. And yeah, we do get stuck. We do plateau. And it's important that when you either feel stuck or you've been, sober and in recovery for a number of years and you kind of what I call plateau, that the things that you have been using on your day-to-day life aren't offering the same results that they used to. And it's really important to admit that to yourself because there's so many things that you can do to keep moving forward. And, I like to say that as you evolve as a person, your recovery is going to have to evolve with you. And whatever that might be, it's good. And that's what's important about what you do at Real Raw Recovery and with doing the podcast and having content, information that is literally at our fingertips these days because everybody has a smartphone or a tablet or what have you. Because you will hear something or read something that's going to make you feel a certain way that's like, what, that resonates with me. I'm going to try that. And if it doesn't work long term, that's fine, man. You learn something new about yourself, but also you're going to have that knowledge to share with another person. And that sharing that knowledge may be what you need to, move past that plateau to get unstuck. So don't stop growing. Don't stop searching. Be very curious about what you're doing in your recovery, especially when it's long-term recovery. Early on, you want to keep that very narrow and focused because you'll find yourself getting overwhelmed. But as you move forward, keep a little bit more of an open mind about things that may help you understand what you learned earlier better.
Yeah, and being flexible. It's similar to in the gym with your workouts or in a relationship. If things are getting stale, you change things up to continue to move forward, and that's okay to do that. But I agree with you 100% that early in recovery, you want a lot of repetition and the same thing, and just start hammering that home. Your unconscious is like absorbing all that.
Think of your sobriety and your early recovery as a muscle. You're going to have to train it. It's going to have to get used to these new movements, these new thoughts, these new emotions. And the more consistent you are with it, the stronger you're going to get. And then, to keep in the analogy, you'll be able to lift heavier things. And what that means in life is you'll be able to mentally and emotionally, endure or learn more, difficult things about yourself and about other people. But that gives you the strength and builds the resilience that you need to keep going. And again, being able to share that with other people is really going to propel your life in recovery farther. So yeah, just be open-minded, but early on, yes, be very, very focused and keep it simple, keep it narrow. Because those are the days that you're really going to need to put in some work.
Again, everybody, thank you for joining our podcast, The Triple R Show, Real World Recovery, where honesty meets healing every single day. Again, I wanted to thank Chad from his podcast, Not All There. And remember that resilience will keep you grounded as you head into the holiday season with awareness and strength. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time, where we will talk about how mirror work will help us find our identity and who we are, and how gratitude can help you get through the season confidently. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.